Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here at Ivanti for today's webinar called Data-Driven Insights with Bots. My name is Michael. I will not be with you very long, but I will be your conductor for the first minute or two here while we just go over a couple quick housekeeping items before we get to the real show. So let's do that. Number one, let's fix what I just did and do it this way. How's that? Okay, much better. Timing-wise, we should be about roughly half an hour today, give or take a few minutes. Might go over a bit, but no big deal there. You can find a whole bunch of content related to today's topic, including Ivanti's brand new bot library on the side panel to the right of your screen. So please do feel free to check that out after we're through. And any questions you might have as we're in the course of the conversation today, please do feel free to ask those as they come to you. We will also be sending you a couple of poll questions as we go along today, so do feel free to engage with those. Can't promise we will get to every question that comes through, but we will certainly try. And your engagement during these sessions just always helps them make them a lot more valuable to everyone, and hopefully you as well. So by all means, speak up, get involved, and we hope you enjoy today's session. So with that all said, I will kick it over to Rex to get us started in proper and get us introduced. So thank you all again.
Welcome, everyone. Quick introductions. I'm Rex McMillan, Vice President of Product Management on our UEM team. And joined with me today are Chris and Robin. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Rex. My name is Chris Goettl. I'm Vice President of Product Management for our remediation and risk products. So in the endpoint management platform, you've got the things that manage devices, and then you need to do things like understand risk and exposure and be able to remediate those. That's where my team complements the SUEM strategy by bringing those risk and remediation pieces.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Robin Rowe, Director of Product Management. I lead our Ivanti neurons for digital experience capabilities, which includes our automation bots, which we're going to be talking a lot about today. So again, within digital experience, we're concerned with understanding, healing, helping manage, monitor, and optimize the user's digital experience. So looking forward to today's session.
Awesome. So, Robin, it sounds like you really try to measure, put a KPI around how Chris and I are impacting everyone.
That's a good summary.
All right, we have a poll question. Let's jump in and look at our first poll question. Start it out with a little bit of feedback here. As we talk about this is really one of those things that we have where we're wanting to talk about that telemetry side. So, Robin, as we talk about the telemetry aspect, what comes to your mind?
Sure. So I guess in the context of bots, it maybe starts out with a little bit of journey. And of course, Rex, you know this one very well. But for the broader audience, when we set about to build bots, we didn't actually set out to build what bots ended up being. We set out to build another product, more of a monitoring experience feature. And we took this concept, we spoke to a lot of different organizations. And really, the more organizations we spoke to, we got this broader understanding that IT departments everywhere, they're doing more with less. There are more apps, there's more people, work locations, increased spectrum of software, the different threats that are emerging, as well as all of the various digital transformation projects that different organizations are involved in. And so really the consensus was, well, okay, we kind of understand where you're going with this product, but the reality is that we don't, unless the product is actually going to help improve the experience, it's not really going to move the needle for us. So organizations are really understanding the need for automation to help resolve this, to resolve this scenario. But the challenge with traditional automation tools is it's either piecemeal, people are doing bits of kind of PowerShell scripting here and there, or for the fully fledged automation products, there's such a barrier to entry that organizations just don't have the time, the resource to be able to fully invest and get the value out of it. And so that's really where bots come in. So if we go back to the telemetry aspect, this is really a core foundational aspect of the experience. And the foundation there, it starts with the discovery capabilities. So on the platform, we have different connectors. So there's about 40 connectors. They're going out into the application ecosystem. So they're pulling in all of the different information. That's where we start to normalize, to reconcile, to augment the data with the inventory engines that are coming in. So you start to get a really robust baseline of inventory information. But then we have our real-time sensor network. So for all of those kind of time-sensitive use cases, CPU usage, memory usage, login times, all of those things that are kind of going to be more up to the minute, all of that's augmented together across these data points. And so from a bot's perspective, how we start to bring all of that information together is really with a low-code, no-code interface. And so what we mean by that is we have the different blocks, which represent these different units of information that we can pull in, thousands of data points. But really where this all makes sense is you can browse a list of all of these queries, you can pull them in, you can connect them together. And as you start to connect these things together, you start to refine down the list of criteria to understand where there's issues, where there's information we want to bubble up. And that's where we start to link those into different actions. So they might be actions, they might be interactions with users, different logic stages. So it becomes really easy to be able to assemble kind of a fully fledged workflow, a sequence of different actions with minimal effort. So it's a real focus on time to value. That's supported by out-of-the-box templates as well. So we're getting on for close to 100 out-of-the-box templates. The list continuously growing in there. Really what the key goal with this is it democratizes access to automation for organizations. So organizations are able to get a broader spectrum of their technical users to leverage automation. So traditionally for users like second line, third line support, the traditional heavyweight automation tools are generally going to be out of reach. Whereas with low code, no code and the bots experience, you can actually have those types of users going and creating bots really as a supplement or an alternative to knowledge articles. So when you think about the shift left, again, having that broader swathe, it's able to use more broadly by the wider IT organization.
You touched on a lot of really critical points there. As you talked about discovery, the thing that comes to my mind is I feel like we've passed discovery today. In today's market, as we talk about discovery is important as a critical piece, but really what we have to have today is actionable discovery. The discovery has to be put in such a way that I understand and know what actions to take immediately, that it becomes that capability. The best automations are always those ones that I don't even realize are automations. Your play on out of the box reminds me of one point in time we had this really powerful tool, but the adoption was low, and so we said, hey, we're going to do this big enablement session. Well, in the meantime, we'd been working with the engineering team, and we'd build it and templatized it, so it was easy to just go through. You had about 12 checkboxes you had to fill out to get to a base template. So we got there and we said, hey, for the enablement session, nobody can go to lunch until we make this work. There was groans and people almost wanting to leave. Then we showed, hey, open it up, fill the 12 spots in, and you have a base working one. From that moment on, people didn't even go to lunch because they were so excited to customize what was working. So great plays here in really helping people move along. Robin and I have been talking about this. What comes across for you in the security world?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things, and I think in the poll responses I was seeing that about half of you have already submitted that user pain is one of the things that we really want to understand as we dig in deeper with this, and that absolutely comes into play. So my group being responsible for patch management, one of our primary use cases that my group focuses on. How much change happens within your organization on a monthly basis? A huge portion of that change happens to be driven by just continuous security updates. That's a lot of potential for user pain. And we've been doing some great things in there, some really some cool things in there. We've even got a patent that got filed on one of these areas around patch intelligence. being able to see like what's going on out there, not only from the patches that are running in your environment, but also kind of scraping from some community discussions from places like Reddit and X, and looking for what types of pain are coming up in a broader kind of community sense. Now, the next thing that we want to do is really taking this to more of a downstream kind of issue. So if you deploy an update out and it fails, that's instant pain that telemetry can tell us about very quickly. What happens when the patch succeeds? I lose telemetry on any of that pain because the patch itself, it looks like no pain occurred. The patch successfully installed, everything's good, right? Well, I'm going to take us back a couple of years to a little event called PrintNightmare. PrintNightmare was absolutely living up to its name. It was an absolute nightmare. You went and deployed the OS update, it succeeded, and it broke printing everywhere in your environment. Over the next 6 months or so, every time the print spooler got changed in that Microsoft OS update each month, everybody cringed, because then they had to go and look to see if printing broke again. And for those of you who follow our Patch Tuesday webinar, you probably remember me talking about that pretty religiously. There was actually one of the months in there, they did over 20 print spooler change CVEs got resolved in one of those months. A whole bunch of people broke again. So how do we start to tap into the downstream issues? When the patch succeeds, where's our next source of telemetry? It's our users. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking what Robin has built around these user sentiment surveys, and we're going to integrate that directly into the patch experience, so that when you automate the rollout of an update, you're going to be able to use as criteria for kind of stopping the flow of that update to go further and further out into your environment by saying, hey, our early adopter and pilot groups, we're going to survey them and get user-based feedback. Hey, the updates have been applied to your system. We'd like you to take a look at, what are the common things you use on a daily basis? Can you print? Can you open these applications? Can you run the things that you do on a daily basis? And get that immediate user feedback to understand if any additional pain occurred when the patch succeeds. So that's just one really good example of where these sentiment surveys and getting deeper into this user experience helps us to drive very reoccurring activities. Patching for most organizations is at least once a month. More and more of you are starting to have multiple patch events every single month because everything's continuous. We get browser updates on a weekly basis, other third-party apps. The OS gets updated at least once a month. So we need to get that telemetry coming in and feeding that understanding of that user pain more quickly and directly to us.
Robin, it sounds like Chris is really playing into your user surveys. Talk to us about, from a DEX viewpoint, the critical nature and why user engagement became so important.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think Chris, you teed up really well to this one. So, yeah, the survey experience is part and parcel of our bots automation, and we took a very deliberate approach in the way that we did that. So, with many organizations, again, from a digital experience perspective, user sentiment is such a key part of the measurement in there. We have the empirical data points, the bits and bytes we can collect from the PC. To Chris's point, it's very easy to understand whether a patch has gone out and installed properly. As with every other IT change, we can understand those bits and bytes very easily, but the user's perception of how that is a lot harder to measure, and too often we're kind of reliant on reactive. Post instance surveys are kind of one of the primary touch points that most organizations are using. But then if we kind of look across the spectrum of other facets of IT that we interact with, it's very difficult to understand the bigger picture in terms of what's the user's perception across all of these different touch points of digital technology. So things like the different applications we use, working remotely versus in the office, the different hardware we use to do the jobs, network security. Obviously, Chris gave a great example of use cases for patch in there as well. So with that in mind, with the mediums that customers have available traditionally, there might be kind of email-based surveys or kind of other mediums, but the challenge that comes with those is really a lack of user engagement. So, for a start, if they're different mediums that the user's not directly using as part of their line of work, it's going to be just that higher barrier of entry for the user to click out and lose their context and go and provide that information. Secondly, if they're not actionable, you go fill out the survey and you don't hear anything back, the user's not necessarily going to be over time, it's not going to be something they're going to be keen to go and participate in necessarily. And they're not always going to be contextual to that user in that scenario either. So by building these into our automation platform, we can tackle those points. So first of all, we integrate into Microsoft Teams. So we're engaging with the omnichannel where the user's doing the work. We're able to present these really low-touch message cards. So again, when we're collecting sentiment from users, it's let's get the quantitative view first. Let's get a rating. Is it just a simple happy emoji, sad emoji? Is it radio buttons? Either way, it's just the minimum effort. The user just has to go and click something. If it's a good experience, they just carry on with their day. It's great. Send a courtesy message. If it's a bad experience, you can, again, that workflow under the hood is going to branch out to do whatever the admin wants to do. But in most cases, you're going to want to then collect the context, collect the reason why. Because again, if someone's voting, I've got a bad experience, or I'm kind of at a 1 or 2 out of 10, it's really important to understand why and what we can do to help fix it. And so really the challenge with that, again, in traditional tools is then, okay, great, I've got 10,000 pieces of qualitative feedback. How do I kind of bring that back together? So that survey encompasses all of the reporting, both the quantitative, the qualitative analysis within there. But because it's part and parcel of these automation bots, you can actually help the user out of that hole. You can go and create an ITSM ticket for them. You can go and take some remediation action on the device. You can go and capture snapshot information and diagnose the issue using that same spectrum of capabilities you have with remediation bots as well. So, in terms of how that is going to help benefit the business in there, well, first of all, you've got that kind of broader visibility across these different areas, and that translates into, well, you can't improve what you're not measuring. So, being able to measure the experience, to be able to baseline these experience, as you roll out improvements, you've then got a direct measuring point to understand if you're having a positive impact on those. And again, as we're driving improvements here, it helps with the productivity, less distractions for the users, context switching. Cost savings is kind of a key outcome as well, just in terms of the efficiency gains, shift left, and employee engagement as well. So, again, engaged employees are going to be better brand advocates. It's going to help with talent retention as well. And to Chris's point on security, again, there's a key focus there in terms of helping with that kind of push and pull experience you traditionally have with security and experience. You can find that optimal balance by making sure you're secure, but also making sure that you understand any impact to productivity and can tackle that to find that optimal balance.
Awesome. Well, Chris, unless you have anything to add, I think we ought to jump into poll number 2.
Well, I think there's one more thing to kind of talk about is we talked about the sentiment surveys. Going beyond that, Neurons bots is really helpful in starting to branch out beyond, so patch management is able to remediate a lot of the exposures we deal with very quickly and easily. But what happens when something is not resolved by a patch? What happens when we might need an interim solution because the patch may not be available for a while? So one thing that several of our customers using Neurons bots and even our own IT and security teams within Ivanti are doing with bots is they're using this from a security perspective to mitigate and remediate non-patchable vulnerabilities. So in the cases like that, another really bad memory for most of us, I think, Log4j. A lot of us had to spend some time and effort trying to figure out where is Log4j in our environment, and even put some mitigations in place, like, hey, there's guidance from a KB article from the vendor who's using this component. They tell you to remove this piece, and you're mitigated until they have an update in place. How do I go about doing that? Bots was an excellent way to do that. You could script it to go look for that instance of Log4j, detect where it's being used, and then script the process of removing that vulnerable component from it yeah, we lost a little bit of logging visibility, but we mitigated the vulnerability while we waited for each of those vendors then to update Log4j libraries within their platform and provide us with an update. So that's just one more example of how Neurons Bots helps us to be proactive about security measures, giving better collaboration and tools to the IT and security teams to be able to go out and manage these really tough security challenges as they arise. So I think that's another one that we've seen a lot of customers finding some great value in the Ivanti Neurons Bots.
Awesome. All right. Definitely, as we watch, there's definitely a change in how we want to interact and what the value that comes with those automations. And it's really not about just the technology, but as Chris kept referring to, the business value, the productivity, and Robin referred to the productivity. Well, the automation we probably would be missing if we didn't talk a little bit about AI. I think in 2024, everything was an AI twist. In 2025, I think we're getting a little more focused in, hey, these are the types and here's where we use AI correctly. There's a lot of talk about agentic AI. Robin, why don't you kind of give us a view of where you see this is headed from a bots and automation viewpoint?
Sure. So I guess maybe before we talk about the futures, I hinted earlier about the some of the challenges specific to sentiment surveys, and a good example of where we're using that AI capability today, generative AI, is if we think about the challenge where we are measuring a touch point within IT. So it could be patches, it could be patch experience, it could be broader device experience. So it's very easy for us to be able to understand a broad brush rating, to understand, okay, fleet-wide, kind of here's my, I'm 3 out of 10, I'm 4 out of 10. That's very easy. It's then also layering on top of that, being able to get the organizational context. Great, that's okay as well. The challenge comes when I start to dig in to understand the reasoning why for that one. So I'm going to ask thousands, tens of thousands of people for free-form feedback. They're going to type in lines of data. We might ask them, please explain your feedback, or please tell us what you don't like. Please tell us what we should keep on doing. Please tell us what we should improve. So we can ask as many questions as we like. We can even have those impact the user's DEX score as well. So that's great. That's another use of AI within there. But when you start to get all of that feedback coming back and you get rows and rows and rows of data, as a human being, it's very hard for us to read all of those individual feedbacks, let alone reading them as a challenge, never mind be able to extract the key insights. What are the themes that are bubbling up again and again? What's the sentiment? What are people liking and not liking? So we use generative AI today as part of the survey experience to bubble up those executive insights, to be able to give per question summaries, understand the different topics and kind of the key points on that one today. Now, in and of itself, that's not agentic AI, but it is one of those kind of foundational experiences that is part of that bigger picture. So I guess the key aspect of agentic AI, it's prioritizing autonomy. So it's perceiving, so gathering the different data from the surroundings, applying the right reasoning to that one, so we understand what the data is going to be used for, identifying the appropriate action based on that, and continuously improving by learning. So the outcomes of that sound very similar to what we're achieving from a bot's perspective. Of course, the goal here is it's helping stretched IT departments, helping other lines of business. It's not just IT, and indeed the broader organization there. So the goal there is efficiency, and better productivity. So again, it's a very fast moving area, and certainly from our perspective, we have these great data points. We've got the automation technology in there. And so from our perspective, you're really going to see a stream of activity in there as we continue to execute on that. And bots is really the foundational experience there. So as we consider how organizations can prepare themselves for this technology, well, measuring the digital experience, deploying these bots, creating bots to address the issues. As we consider the adoption of agentic AI capabilities as they get added into this flow, again, as we think about the experience of autonomous remediations, again, bots are delivered powerful automations within very controlled guardrails. So this is really a journey of trust where step one is having that ultimate control over these rules-based remediations. Step two is, as you understand those remediations and the capabilities, being able to apply an additional layer of autonomy within that one to expand the remediation possibilities within there. So again, lots of great things that we have on the roadmap. Obviously, we can't talk about all of them today, but yeah, really excited to have you on the journey there as we continue to move forwards on those.
Chris, we can hardly keep Robin contained with his excitement about all the fun things that are coming. How about from the security and risk view side?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more to come here when we start to talk about, shifting from, our traditional way of managing vulnerabilities into really getting to more of an exposure management view. One key piece that starts to come into play there. Yes, we need better risk-based prioritization. We need improved ability to respond to threats and really cut through a lot of the noise there. But one of the essential pieces that I think is a nice crossover into this topic is business impact. We talked about this a little bit with the sentiment survey coming into the patch experience. What is the business impact of the change that we're about to make? And understanding that is very important, and capturing that, again, with what Robin was just talking about. How do we capture free-form responses and sentiment and drill that down, boil that down into something more tangible, and start to tie that to things like business risk? If we could start to see a trend with what's going on, we could start to zero in on different issues. Maybe we see certain applications and the impact that certain activities have on that. If we could see that historical track record, if we can get the feedback from the users who are directly involved there, we start to get that better idea of the activities we're doing and the business impact they're having within our organization. So I'm excited to see where we can go from here. Robin's team and my team have been talking a lot about, both near-term integrations like the sentiment survey and longer-term integrations like how to bring in the bots experience to help us do full runbook-style automation for server patching in the data center. Things like that are going to be interesting crossovers with the Neurons bots experience, and I think there's even more to come with how we see that playing into exposure management in the long term.
That's exciting to hear. And in the UEM side, we're in the same boat. We definitely work closely with Robin. This is a lot of times we're saying, hey, instead of taking these actions manually, how do we work with Robin and make sure that these are in content? We really talk a lot about how do we set the standard and then manage the exceptions. So as we work in UEM, we really are focusing on, hey, we want to be able to set, manage the exceptions, and drive all of that with automation. And those automations really key off from user input. The user input really is a key component there. So very exciting to see how and far and where we're really headed with the automations, bots, and AI integrations into this. Well, we have a third and final poll question. I think we can probably get that put up on the screen now. As we put in that third and final poll, we appreciate everybody coming and taking a few minutes with us today. Chris, Robin, any final last words, actionable points for people? If not, Robin, you got one. I can see it's right there.
Yeah, well, yeah, would definitely love to get a broader understanding from the attendees in terms of great use cases you have. Maybe you already have bots today, or maybe there's a challenge that you're looking to solve. Certainly, as we look at some of the examples in which customers are using bots today, again, it's not necessarily all about remediation or collecting sentiment. We see them using this technology to drive their Windows 10 to Windows 11 migrations. Chris touched on the use cases for Log4J, PrintNightmare. But again, there's a lot of very app-specific use cases or organization-specific use cases because it has affected the ability to use it as a Swiss Army knife. You've got that low-code, no-code. You can flex it for all of those kind of little organizational-specific use cases within there. But again, would love to hear the feedback there as well.
Yeah, so, I'll throw one topic in there as another angle for bots, and a shameless plug for my product area as well. Windows 10 end of life coming up in October. I know a lot of you are concerned about this one. We've seen a number of bots popping up for Windows 11 migration, including our own, the customer zero we call them, but our Ivanti IT is using bots to drive Windows 11 migrations. Why? Well, app distribution can do that. But with the bots experience, we have the ability to interact at a different level. So bringing that into the bots experience, you can do things like let's check to see if the hardware meets the requirements, and then pop up and say, "Hey, user, are you ready to do your migration to Windows 11, or do you want to defer that?" And I've even been on calls with people where it pops up and they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, definitely deferring right now because I'm busy at the moment." And then it'll pop up later and help them through that experience there. But with the bots experience, you get a whole new level of interaction with complicated changes in our environment like that. For those of you who can't get everything to Windows 11, remember, Microsoft is starting their Windows 10 ESU, and they're going to do that for 3 years. Ivanti will be supporting that with our patching solutions. So if you do need that ESU support for the Windows 10 systems that can't migrate, we've got a solution on that side as well.
Great feedback, great list of some of those things. So my key takeaway here is, hey, the barrier to entry is not high. There's predefined bots. We have automations that are built. Really take that effort, take the time, go find one, and automate something. Every time we automate, we buy ourselves a little bit of time. We buy that time and we can use that time to automate something else. As we have that ability to go in and build those automations, it changes the game of where we're spending our time. We go from keeping the lights on to having the time to innovate. And we really here at Ivanti want to help you drive those innovations, increase your users' productivity, decrease the risk, provide the secure computing environment. And we know and see the values that come in automating and really involving the user in a bunch of this information. We appreciate everybody taking their time to join us as we talk about automation and bots. Thank you very much for your time today. Chris, Robin, thank you very much for being panelists and coming and sharing with our customers. Thanks everyone for the time today.
Thanks everyone.